How can leaders maintain balance in times of growth? I'm Kate Save. The Inspired CEO starts now. Welcome to The Inspired CEO, where each episode we explore the innovative wellness practices that are driving success and longevity in the modern business world. In this episode, we discuss the key factors in maintaining well-being when driving expansion. Joining me now is founder and managing director of SLADE Group and Transearch, GEOFF SLADE. Thank you, Geoff. And tell me about your career. You have had many businesses, started, exited, and still going and expanding. Tell us about your career.
Thanks, Kate. Good to be here. Well, my career really started in 1967. I'd been trained in HR in a big corporate.
Yes.
And they brought me to Melbourne. I was a country boy. They brought me to Melbourne and said, you'll be the HR manager on the next big project we win. It was a construction company.
Right.
And I worked with them in Melbourne for about a year, and I started to get bored. So I applied for a job through a newspaper ad for another big corporate. And they quickly told me that I was too young. I was only 21 at the time. They told me I was too young for the job for which I'd applied, but would I be interested in consulting?
Oh.
And I said, I don't know what consultants do, tell me. So after, cut a long story short, after 4 interviews, the last one with the CEO of that company, who at the time were the biggest recruitment company in Victoria, probably Australia.
Right.
The CEO said to me, Geoff, the job is yours if you want it. I'm going overseas tomorrow and won't be back for 2 weeks, so give me your answer then. And as fate would have it, he tragically got killed in a car accident 4 days later in London, and so the job never eventuated. But it made me look at the industry. And I went to my parents, who we came from what you'd call a fairly uneconomic business background.
Yes.
Very, very little money in a tiny country town, and I said to my dad, I want to start an employment agency. He said, what's that? I said, I don't really know, but I think I'd be good at it. And he said, I wouldn't lend it to you if you did know. And I certainly won't lend it to you if given you don't. And my dear old mother came to me about 2 weeks later and said, do you really want to do this? And I said, yes, I do. She said, well, I've got $300 in the bank. I'll lend it to you.
Really?
To start up. And $300 in those days didn't buy you, I mean, it buys you nothing today,
yeah,
a dinner. But in those days, it didn't buy you much. It was enough to pay the month's rent on an office which I had to basically clean out and paint before I could even sit in there.
Gosh. And
it was on the corner of Collins and Elizabeth Street. And anyway, I started, and for the first couple of years, I rejected going out and visiting companies because I thought they wouldn't give me their business because I was too young, so it was all done on the telephone.
Oh.
And I managed to survive for about 7 years doing nothing but office recruitment, office staff. And in those days, the fees were much less than they are today.
Yes.
1 week's salary was a typical fee for a job placement. But having said that, job placements were rolling in the door like there was, job opportunities were rolling in the door like there was no tomorrow. And I remember 1 week I did 92 interviews.
Gosh.
In 1 week, and made 17 placements.
Wow.
Now, you're lucky if you make 17 placements in a year these days.
So it's 17 salaries, first week salaries that you've got to take home.
Whereas today, the average fee is about 20% of the annual salary.
Right, okay.
15 to 20%. And so in 1974, I decided to get into executive recruitment. I could see that the fees were bigger there and there were more opportunities. And so I took over Christopher Scase's old office. I don't know whether you remember him.
Yes, I do, yes.
And would you believe his PA from those days now works for me in Melbourne.
Goodness me.
Which I didn't know until after she joined. And we did very well. In the first year, we made a profit of $70,000, which I had never dreamed about.
Yeah, so what year are we in now?
74.
Okay.
To put it in perspective, I went and bought a brand new Porsche for $14,700.
Wow.
Carrera.
Wow.
So that sort of gives you an idea of what money was like in those days.
Yeah.
And between 74 and 88, we became the biggest executive recruitment company in Australia. And I sold out to a big multinational out of London, who, as it turned out, had a PE of 50 times earnings on the London Stock Exchange at the time.
Gosh.
They walked into my office and said, "We want to buy your business." And I said, "My business is not for sale." And they said, "Well, think of a number and double it, and we might well pay it." So I did.
Oh.
And they did. So I then spent a couple of years as HR director at Pacific Dunlop, which was the biggest industrial company in Australia at the time, and then started my current company, SLADE Group, and focused only on the Melbourne market.
Yes.
In the previous company, we were in 7 cities around Australia and New Zealand.
Gosh.
But I didn't want to get on planes anymore every 5 minutes, so I decided to just focus on Melbourne.
And your personal passion for this, how did you, I guess you've had the economic success from it, but what drove you to really keep going for more and more?
Well, this is my 58th year in the business.
Gosh, wow.
Which
you
is
love it.
a bit longer than most people stay in the one game. I do have a personal passion for it. I still get a great kick out of placing someone in a job that enhances their life and their career and their future. And I think that's part of the driver. And also it helps solve a problem for the employer.
Yes, right. It's on both sides, because I think people today feel a bit lost with purpose. And being in a career for 58 years, it's very purposeful, because you could change your mind. You could do anything you wanted to do if you had such early success, but you chose to keep doing that. I
did.
What else, what is that feeling? How do other people find something that they want to stick to for as long as you have?
Well, I think it gets down to you have to like or love what you do.
Yes.
Otherwise, your passion doesn't remain.
Yeah.
I think that's the reality. And I have always loved it, and I still do.
Yes.
Not sure I can go on for much longer, but at the same time, I could possibly do it for another few years. Who knows? It depends on my health.
And have you found that balance now with work, family, even your own personal health? What does that look like for you?
Well, I think having a really workable family and one where everyone respects what the other person does is a big thing.
Yes.
In that. My kids have all been pretty successful in terms of what they've done. None of them want to work in the business. They said, "We don't want to end up like you, Dad," whatever that meant. Anyway, I think they thought I was sort of almost a 24/7 business person.
Yes.
And they've all been very, substantially successful.
Yeah. It's the role modelling though too. You've showed them
to an extent, I think that's true.
Yeah.
And I also think that telling things as they are, rather than mollycoddling young people, which happens a lot, I think, today. They don't really understand. Like right now, we're going through a very tough time in business, the whole country.
Yes.
And this is really the first time since 1992 that young people are having to face up to the fact that they might lose their job.
Yeah.
And even in my business, we've put off a couple of people recently, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because it was just not economically viable.
And you've seen that through experience. Your resilience is built over time. You don't last in a business for 58 years of career without building resilience.
No.
What tips would you give other people about how to get through what we're going through now, as hard as it is?
Well, I'm a great believer in the sort of business I'm in anyway. This may not apply to all businesses, but in the sort of business I'm in, I think relationships, building relationships is fundamental. And people like to do business with people they like.
Yes.
And I think being honest with in your relationships with clients, with candidates, I've always adopted the view that today's candidate is tomorrow's client in the recruitment business, providing they're well looked after. You know, you never know who's going to kick on and who's not going to kick on, but if they get into a position of decision making where they might want to recruit somebody, if they've been really well looked after by my people or our people, then there's a good chance they'll come back to us. One of the proudest moments in my recruitment career has been when a gentleman we didn't place in a job, he was a head of IT with a big company, and he ended up getting a job through somebody else. But about 5 months after he started in his new job, he came in, he rang me and said, could I come and see you? And I said, yeah. He came in and he said, Geoff, I've reorganised my division where I am now.
Yes.
And I've got 12 assignments I want to give you.
Wow. So that relationship you built, even without putting him in place, you built that relationship.
Exactly. And not only did I build it, but when I first interviewed him, I thought he was very placeable.
Yes. And
that we could help him. Yes. So I got 2 or 3 other people to meet with him as well. And as a result of those discussions, he clearly thought that we, I suppose, cared about him.
Yes.
And therefore we would care about the people we recruited for him.
So your leadership has really passed down onto the team, because otherwise they wouldn't be building relationships the way that you still are now. So that's incredible.
Well, yes and no. I think, you know, some of them grasp it more quickly and better than others.
Yes.
Not everybody grasps it, and they clearly usually don't cut it when it gets down to the wire. But the people who do grasp it, I think the answer is yes. They do build relationships and are well rewarded as a result.
So that makes sense to me. We've uncovered the secrets to your long career and your success. It is 58 years of relationship building, and all of those circles that were separate, different communities, have all somehow come back together again, and it all goes around.
It's true to an extent. I'm at the point now where most of my contacts are either retired or dead, unfortunately.
So train a good younger team below you, and the succession plan is there.
And we do spend we put a lot of emphasis on training.
Fantastic.
You know, I run a training session in the business every Wednesday morning. I bring in guest speakers to come and talk to my team about, you know, even broader philosophies on life and, you know, what's it all about?
Yeah.
Not just on how to recruit great people.
So engaging your team as much as engaging your clients and building the relationships.
Well, if I don't engage the team, they'll never engage the clients. That's the reality.
Absolutely. Happy team and happy business.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thank you for sharing today,
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. So this is Ticker, and we will be right back.
You're watching Ticker. We'll have more in just a few minutes.